As Christina and Alyssa mentioned, general housekeeping, be sure to respond to the poll questions. That'll be our mechanism for you to be able to receive the continuing education credits. Please use the Q&A feature. That will be for the questions for your presenters. And you will receive a link to the online evaluation at the end of the training. Be sure to complete that online feedback to let us know how we did. Next slide. That about wraps it up. We look forward to seeing you at a future event, and take it away.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Mike. I would now like to introduce Don Cramer from the Bureau of Information Systems so we can get started on today's training. So Don, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. Don Cramer. I've been with the department for over 35 years. Started out as a principal geologist in the Division of Water Resources, worked in BUST, and now I'm supervising two groups in the SRP's Bureau of Information Systems. This training today will be on the SRP profile of the NJ-GeoWeb that we've developed. We started developing this over 2 years ago. We started working with a few LSRPs in a work group to assist in the development. We had an initial meeting before COVID-19 hit, and then we had some subsequent email discussions before we published the original app in July of 2020. The SRP profile is a modification of the NJ-GeoWeb, which we've designed to be able to interact with GIS layers and perform simple evaluations that you may be undertaking during your remedial investigation and site investigation activities. It's not a tool to perform complex GIS operations. For that, you'd need a more robust platform. This is a tool that is constantly being modified by my group, and we wish you to give us feedback. It's important to us. The one thing that we will use is our splash screen that comes up when the application starts, and we will use that to announce new layers, changes to the tools, things of that nature. We actually used it the past couple of weeks to announce that our profile would be shut down during this presentation to reduce the demand on our server. We do have a 500 people attending to this training, and if all 500 were to try to follow along, it would have caused severe demand and strain on the application. So, like I said, feedback, we welcome it. We have an email address set up, srpgis@dep.gov. And all that I ask you to do is include a subject line mentioning the SRP profile so we know where to route the emails. We get a considerable amount of emails. So, jumping in now to the intro. The platform was upgraded so the DEP upgraded its platform in July 2020. The previous version did have an SRP profile, but it was an outdated software. So the new version that we're going to use now is a web-based application. It uses ArcGIS Online, and in that it has expanded functionality. It uses prepackaged widgets that we can control. In that it's customizable, so we can design it to hopefully support your needs. And the DEP has about 70 of these online maps and applications. We just launched our GIS webpage. Let me bring it into the screen here. So this is the gallery of all of the applications. As you can see, there are about over 70 of them, ranging from the NJ-GeoWeb, our SRP profile, to potential lead exposure mapping. Runs the gambit of most programs actually have an application that is available. So the two applications that I'm going to mention today, the first, just in passing, is the NJ-GeoWeb. That was designed by the department, and it was designed for all DEP users. The SRP profile that we're going to talk about today was designed for the SRP, regulated community, and concerned citizens in mind. The layers are organized for site remediation use. The tools widgets designed to assist in your investigations. There are some major differences between the GeoWeb and SRP profile. We've modified the GIS layer lists. This is the NJ-GeoWeb version of the layer list. This is our SRP profile version. We've reduced a lot of the, we've removed a lot of the layers not related to SRP, such as habitat, energy, historic preservation. We've also taken out all the receptors from these groups. They were scattered throughout the programs. We pulled them out and we've grouped them with most of the receptors, and they are available in one group. We've also added a commonly used layer tool, which we've pulled out what we think are the layers needed to do site remediation, investigation, and evaluations, and we put them into one tool that is easily available. To be honest, most of the time you're going to be in this tool and you won't have to go looking for any other layers. There are some limitations. The biggest limitation is that only 1,000 records can be drawn at any one time. This is a limitation set by the software, so it's not our control. One of the impacts on that is that the layers do not draw at all scales, but if you zoom in closer, layers will then become available and will display. You cannot change the symbology. You're stuck with the symbology that we have set. So if it's a red dot, you got a red dot. You can't change it to a more pleasant color. Manually added layers cannot be deleted. We'll talk about that during Joe's presentation. And from what we're told, we have no evidence to this, but we're told it's best viewed in Google Chrome. There are a lot of improvements. The biggest improvement is that you can add ArcGIS online layers that are in the ArcGIS universe. These are layers published by EPA, USGS, NOAA, Rutgers, Camden County has a lot of layers. Almost every organization has that puts out data. You will be able to get a layer from their map service. The other really neat thing is that you can add your own GIS file. If it's a KML file, if it's a CSV file, shapefile, and a few other varieties. Joe will go through how to do this later on. We have customized the pop-ups to assist in the data interpretation. Launching GeoWeb, launching data miner reports are made easier through the pop-up. The navigation around the display is easier, and there are more search capabilities that are available. So let's go into how the information is displayed in GeoWeb. Most people may have already seen this, but let's just go through it one more time. If you click on a feature on the map, a pop-up will appear. You can also view information in the attribute table, which is at the bottom of the screen here. We have linked data miner reports, web pages. So let's go into some of a little bit more detail about the pop-up. And here we're looking at the Iec layer, the pop-up for that layer. So there's basic information in this section right here. The Iec report has a link to data miner reports. It also has a link to a web page that guides you through what an Iec is and some of the details of the description of the information that is provided. It also has related tables, such as the source, receptor, and any LSRP data that who's assigned to the case. So I'm going to click on this link right here. I'm going to click on the link. What that does is it opens a pop-up, another pop-up window, which would give all of the, in this case, receptors that are here. There is only one receptor. So I'll click on it. If I clicked on this up here, I would go back to the original pop-up. If I clicked down here, I would view the information in an attribute table that we'll talk about later. But I'm going to click on this link here, which opens up this secondary pop-up window, which has information about the receptor data. And here is the layer information. You can tell that it's a domestic well, and the receptor has been addressed in 1994. Then you click on this up here, and it moves you back over to the main pop-up. So we're always trying to release new layers. In fact, we did release the Iec layer, the immediate environmental concern layer, in April of this month. We've gotten approval, and we are working to release an SRP preferred ID layer, which will be for every site SRP has ever worked on, with the exception of closed UHOTs. They will be removed from the layer. This will give approximately 50,000 points that you will be able to evaluate, query, and search based on those attributes. So the way you get into this SRP profile, there are several ways that you can do it. You can do it through the SRP web page. You can do it through a URL link. You can create your own link that we'll talk about in a few minutes. I'm going to actually launch it through the SRP web page. So here's the SRP web page. You go down along the side here. Here's NJ-GeoWeb. We're going to launch NJ-GeoWeb Site Remediation Profile. And you click on that, and it launches the interface. First thing that comes up is that splash screen that we talked about. So the splash screen here says, be advised that the site remediation profile will not be available on these 2 dates. So that this is where you would, up here is where you would look for alerts. Click OK to get into the application. So the map displays in the center here with the tools on the left-hand side and on the upper ribbon, especially in this main tool set here. We have set a default settings for the application. They are the base map that's being shown here. We have set that at topographic. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And here you see what I was talking about in this commonly used layer pop-up, or I'm sorry, in this tool. We have automatically turned on the known contaminated site list, the county layer, and the color imagery for 2020. So just some basic tips, guidance for the application. Simplest, you hover over a tool, gives you a tool tip on what the tool is. Some of these tools have a triangle at the bottom. Click on it, it gives you more information, more choices. Since it's a web-based app, there is no right mouse click. It has been replaced with a 3-dot icon or more information icon, and you click on it and it provides you with additional choices. There's also this 3-bar icon, and you click on that and it globally turns on and off layers, and it expands some layer functions. So as I was saying, this checkbox here tells you which maps have been turned on or off, which are displaying or not displaying. The triangle here opens up the symbology, which tells you a little bit more information about the dot. Let me click on and view the Iec layer. As you can see, the dots are drawing. The performance usually is not this bad. Oh, there they go. They took a while for them to draw. If you look at the dots, the key is over here on the left. Circles being for potable well, blue being for receptor in progress, green being the ones that have already been addressed and they're only dealing with source issues, and so on. So the grayed out layer here, the known contaminated site list, it's chosen, but it's not visible because it has over 10,000 records in it, and it can't draw at this scale. If it did, it would only draw the first 1,000 records. You can use the legend to remind yourself what layers are being drawn. This is very useful when you are zoomed in really closely and the map is covered by something and you don't really know what it is. You can see what layers are being drawn. You click on a feature on the map and the pop-up window appears. So here's the information in the pop-up window. One thing that you want to do is close out things as you go along. If you're not going to use it, you want to clean up after yourself. If you're having trouble redrawing, like I was just having, one of the easy things to do is to turn off large layers and imagery, so that it reduces your buffer size. It will let the map redraw quicker. So if you're having trouble with refresh rates, turning off the layers that are and imagery is your best bet. And don't be afraid to click. If you can't really screw anything up. Nothing's saved. When you get back into the application, everything starts from scratch. And if you get to a point where you're so confused, all you need to do is click the refresh button or reload button, and that will get you back into the first position. I'm gonna break now for a poll question.
Okay, I'm here to do the first poll question. So Tyrone and Anthony, when you're ready, go ahead and pop that up on the screen. When you click on a symbol in the map, the information box that pops up is called a pop-up. True or false? So we'll give you a minute to answer that question. And Don will circle back with what the answer is when we are done with the poll question. As Don politely requested, if you're following along in GeoWeb, if you'd be kind enough to quit out of the application and not follow along, we'd greatly appreciate it. And I believe the rest of the participants would appreciate it. Upcoming training-wise, the department will be posting today that there will be training on the new response action outcome guidance. That will be November 23rd. And the poll is over, so we can talk more about upcoming training later. Don, do you want to just circle back on the answer and continue?
The answer is true. When you click on a symbol in the map, the information that is displayed is in the pop-up. So let me go on to the next portion of the talk, where we'll go into the basic tools. And the first thing that we'll talk about is this window that automatically opens up here in the right-hand side. So basically it talks about this application, as the name says. There's a little description of the app in the top here, but the major thing that it provides is the first two links are to the user guide. This is the NJ-GeoWeb user guide, the department's, but most of our tools react and use the same functionality. So if you're in doubt, that's a good place to look at. The third link is to this layer description and metadata, and I clicked on it to open up. This displays all the layers that the department manages and provides. So it's a wealth of knowledge. In that, it also has the metadata attached to it, which is information about the layer, how the layer was created, and what it represents. And the final link here is this NJ-GeoWeb instructional video playlist. And this is very useful if you didn't catch everything we talked about. And for instance, you didn't get information about the share tool that I'm going to talk about. And to be honest, there's better information and more thorough information in this link here, but it provides a 2.5 to 3 minute video training presentation on the tool that it is for. And they're very well done. So the last part is the featured functionality, which basically is just a listing of all the major tools that we're going to talk about, the icon, and just a little brief overview. So now let's talk about map navigation, how to get around the map. The easiest way to get around the map is the pan feature, which you click and hold your left mouse button and then move around, and it moves the map to wherever you center, wherever you want it. The next is zooming in, and let me turn off all the layers. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but this will draw quicker. So the zooming in, you can use the plus button, the zoom in button on the left side here. And just clicking it zooms in, and the zoom out, the minus button, does the opposite. The thing to note is that it zooms in on the center of the map. The next type of zooming in and zooming out is with the mouse wheel. So it's simple. If you push the mouse forward, it zooms in, and pulling it back zooms it out. The difference between these two zooms is where the zooming actually takes place. For instance, I am on Sandy Hook, and I'm zooming in on that, and Sandy Hook becomes the center zoom point. So you can navigate around the map in this regard. You can zoom out. If you want to bring the map over to the right, you move the mouse over to the right-hand side and zoom out. It brings everything over to the right, and then you can put your mouse on Edison and zoom in. Very, very simple. So the next thing that it has is there are zoom to links scattered throughout some of the tools. The first one here is in the common used layers. So if you go into the known contaminated site list, you click on the zoom to, and it zooms to the layer, whatever the layer draws at. So basically what this is doing here is the known contaminated site list draws at a certain scale. When you use the zoom to through this, it will draw at the set outer limits of the visibility level. Turn that off. The other way to do that, let me turn on the Iec layer. The other way to do that is you click on the icon, and in the pop-up box, there's a zoom to. So that'll zoom to the scale that we have set for the display of a single feature in a layer. Each layer may be a little bit different. The one thing that there is another one down in the attribute table that we will talk about later. The other thing that, while we're here in the pop-up box, we'll talk about is that if you click the three-dot icon, you can pan to, and what this does is it moves your point to the center of the screen. So using the zoom to and the pan to, you can relocate your point to the center of the screen. It might have been easier just to be honest, drag the screen over, but these are features that are available. That's sometimes when you get into different situations, it may be useful to use. So let's go down the other here. The house icon is the default extent, and we have set the default extent to New Jersey. We turn off those layers again. The next one down is a my location tool. You click on it, it locates you on the map. So I click on it, it locates me. I am in Trenton. The thing to note is that the icon has changed to a square, and the app has put a marker on that. To get rid of that, you click it again, and it returns to the original icon. This is best used through a tablet or a mobile phone. The next tool is the full screen. You click on it, and it pops up to the full screen mode. Hitting escape or clicking on the icon again will return you to the normal viewing mode. And the final navigation tools are a group of tools: previous extent and next extent tool, and you click on it and it draws the previous extent that I had up. So I'm clicking on it and it goes back to the previous extents. I use the next one, the next extent tool, and it returns to the newer map in the sequence. So using these tools, you can go back to your previous view and then move forward back to where you were to begin with. Just to mention, so now I'm going to go across these tools. Commonly used layers I won't go into right now, but the next one is the basement gallery. I had said that we had set topographic as the default basement gallery or basement map, but what does that mean? Well, basement maps are referenced maps on which all other layers are drawn and applications perform over top of. These are always turned on. You cannot turn them off, but they have been drawn. They've been optimized so that they draw very quickly, and because of that, you cannot interact with the layers. You can't search them. You can't query them. And as I said, it is the bottom layer to be drawn. So it is at the bottom of the hierarchy of how layers are drawn. So let's go look at some of the basement gallery. So there's a large variety that you can pick from. Excuse me. I'm just going to highlight a couple of them. This imagery with labels is similar to one that you'd have on your phone or tablet. The other one that I'm going to is a light gray canvas, and this basically is just a flat gray. This is very useful if you're trying to search for very small or objects it's very hard to locate. A lot of times in these base maps, a feature can hide, for lack of a better description. You click on the light gray canvas and they now pop, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The other is our 2015 imagery that the department provides. And the streets basically is another similar view of the topography or the topographic one that I was talking about. But let's go looking at the effect of what I was talking about with a light gray canvas. So deed notices are this mustardy color. You get out a little bit, and sometimes it may be difficult to see where let me turn off the labels. It may be difficult to see where all the deed notices are. But if you go in to your base map and turn it on to light canvas or light gray canvas, as I said, they are very, very visible from the back canvas. Let me turn the topographic back on. Excuse me. The next thing is this legend. We just talked about it a little bit earlier. The legend describes what is open. Right now I can tell that the NGEM sites, the KCSL list, and the IECs are clicked and drawing at this time. Let me turn off all layers. The next thing that the tool is a share tool, which is right here below the search box, and you click on that, and it gives you a shared information there. So what you can do is you can set the current map extent and remember the visible layers, and you come back and you can provide this to other people using other platforms. You can copy it and send it however you want. The thing is a link here in the top, which for this one opens up our GIS webpage. I think now it's time to break for a poll question. We're going to stop for poll question number 2.
Thank you, Don. Whenever we're ready to put up poll question 2. Okay, great. Which of the following allows a user to zoom into a particular feature? So I'll give you all a minute to look through those answers and select an answer. Just remember that you have to answer 3 out of 4 of the poll questions that will be appearing randomly throughout the presentation in order to get your continuing education credits. So make sure you're logged in and answering these questions as they come up. You don't have to get them right, but you do have to answer them. And just a reminder that we are not following along in the GeoWeb profile just because it will impact the performance of Don while he's on there using it as well. So just to keep the presentation smooth, we're going to stay off of that. All right, so you should have another few seconds here. All right, great. So Don, do you want to go over the answer to that question?
Yes, so it was very simple. All 4 or all 3 of the ways that you can zoom there are many ways that you can do that. So the answer was all of the above, number 4.
Okay,
so
great.
I think this time we're opening up to questions, right?
Yep, exactly. So we have a couple questions already. So I'm going to ask them right now. So the first question we have is, do you have to log into ArcGIS to access GeoWeb?
I think the answer is no. This does not need an ArcGIS login. This is open to anybody.
Okay, and the next question is, when I go to the link to access the SRP web map, I get a message stating that I don't have access. Are the sharing/permission settings set to be accessible to the public?
If he did that today, we, as we talked earlier, we have turned off the SRP profile for today, for the morning.
Okay. And then we have another question. What is the difference between known contaminated sites and NGEM sites?
So we'll go into that in a little bit, but known contaminated sites are SRP sites where there has been known or the contamination has been confirmed to be on the site and is still being remediated.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that. For NGEM sites, it's basically any site within the department.
Yep.
So, and any program. So it can be land use, can have an NGEM site, and it could be multiple programs too. So you can have an NGEM site that's part of an SRP site or part of an SRP case, but it could also have a number of other program interests involved.
We'll go into that in a little bit down the road.
Yep.
Okay, I don't see any more questions right now. So Don, if you want to continue with your presentation, feel free.
Okay, so now we're going to go into our searching tools. I will just quickly go through some of these, hopefully. The one of the things that the first one that I'm going to talk about is the address search box, which is here in the upper left corner. Everybody probably who goes on the mapping app is familiar with this. The down arrow turns on the different, or shows you the different geocoders that we use. We use the NJ-GeoCode, and we also use the ArcGIS World Geocode service. So basically what's happening here is that you submit an address or location to a geocoder, which turns it into spatial data and then locates it on the map. So I'm going to put in first an address. As always, we put in our home address of our building, and it comes down in the drop downs. You click on it and it zooms to it. Very, very familiar to everybody. The next one, you can also search for places like Liberty State Park. And if you notice, the NJ-GeoCode, which is here, does not have it. But if you come down here for the ArcGIS World Service, it has Liberty State Park here. You click on it, and it zooms to Liberty State Park. Excuse me. So the next thing, very simple. The next thing is on the tools above here. The main toolbar the first in line is the searches tool, and you click on it. And the difference here is that these are searching based on the information in layers that we have chosen. So we can change this a little bit. This is where SRP has control over what layers you are able to search. So we've chosen these layers for your searching, and so basically let's see, the layers, the NGEM sites, underground storage tanks, IECs, municipalities. I'm going to search the known contaminated site list. This is where we come into the problem of only the first 1,000 records are shown in a layer. So I am going to go and click on or activate the known contaminated site list. You don't need to do that to search it, but I just wanted to do that at this time. So I want to search for a certain PI 024398. You notice the search disappeared, but the word search more appeared. This is because in this pick list, only the first 1,000 records were displayed. There's over 10,000 points here, so I need to search more. Now it shows up, I click on it. I can change the name if I want to, PI, put in whatever I want, and I can click the apply button. And what that does, it zooms to it, but it also shows here, sorry, I just have an icon in place of right where I needed to click a button for the webinar. So there are a few things that you can see from here. It just picked up one of one. So now I want to go back and search a different way. I want to search based on name. So one of the things is that there is a wildcard available for the beginning. You can put a %, which is the wildcard. I'm not going to use that. Put in Trenton, and I need to empty out the PI number, and I can rename the query if I want, and click apply. What this will give me is a list of the names of the KCSL sites with names that start with Trenton. Excuse me. So if you see that it found 15 features, there's a couple things that I want to do here. This arrow will compress the individual piece of information here. The 3-bar icon collapse all of them. So I can click on a feature and it will zoom to that choice. So it's pretty simple. You just click on the feature and it will move. So the next thing is clicking the 3-dot icon in here. And this will bring up additional information, the zoom to, which we talked about, and you can flash it. If you don't see it, you can flash it. What that does is it just gives it a burst, so it tells you it shows you where they are. Another thing that we'll talk about later on, but just want to mention in the searches, you'll have this capability. You can export this information into a CSV file for your use in Excel, for instance. Excuse me. So you can click on the remove this result also, but first I want to show you that the search has created its own layer, which is displayed here. So I can work on this, so I can zoom to that layer. Here are all the dots that that represent sites in Trenton. You can turn them on and off. Let me turn off the labels for that. Sometimes labels are very useful, sometimes they are annoying to view on the screen. So anyway, I can turn the searched results on and off. But when I'm done with it, I want to hit the 3-dot icon and I want to remove this result before I move on to something else. I click the taskbar menu and then click the arrow key, which will bring me back into the listing of the layers. The next thing we'll talk about is the Parcel search tool. It does exactly what it looks like. You click on the county. I want to look for parcels block 701 in Trenton City. So I click on the county municipality, enter M for Mercer. It comes down here to the group, and then I click Trenton City, and then I would type in the block 701. I want to do an exact match, and then I run it. So the results are here. The results are drawn on the map. They are not in the output box. If you want to see the results, you'll have to click the 3-dot icon and view an attribute table. So here they are down here in the attribute table, which will go into a little bit more detail later on. But you click on the attribute and it shows you the selected one. This button lowers and hides and shows the attribute table. You click on and you can view the pop-up. As you can see here, the output is drawn. It's basically a layer that's been drawn in the commonly used list here. And I click X to get out of it. The last search capabilities that are here is this locate XY coordinate. It's pretty straightforward. But it will only use state plane coordinates. So I want to look for 50,000 and 681.1000. So you enter your easting and northing and click run. Hopefully I typed those correctly. And it will show you, it will plot it up on a map, zoom out, and it'll show you where it appears. So the commonly used layers is a point, labeled as a point layer. It's on the map. If you want to get rid of it, you need to click the clear. So those are our search capabilities that we have. I'm going to go now into the attribute table. Most of that stuff probably was pretty straightforward. The attribute table can be a little complicated. Let me turn on the commonly used layers. Turn layers off. So I'm going to look at the CEAs. And I am going to the one way that you view the attribute table is through the 3-dot icon that's associated with the layer name in the commonly used layers. So I click on the 3-dot icon and I choose view an attribute table. And the attributes show up in the bottom of the screen. I'm going to increase the visibility. So if in the lower left corner, it tells you that there's 5,557 features in the CEA coverage. So there's that many polygons, CEA polygons that we've mapped. This is an unfiltered CEA count. There may be more, depending on the CEA, there may be more polygons, but that's a good estimate of the number of mapped CEAs. So the other way in which this can be done is, so you have a CEA on the map, you click on it, you click the 3-dot icon, and you can view the attribute table in this manner. When you do it in this manner, you are looking at the information for, and I clicked on the view attribute table, that is now displaying the information that is only for this feature. So it has all of the values that we have in the CEA layer. The one thing that I'll just mention quickly is that if you notice, our CEA table does not have all the information out of the attribute table. We have cherry-picked the most important information and put it in this pop-up. Also, for contaminants, instead of just whether there is a compound or not in the table down here, for instance, this CEA has benzene in it. Sorry about that. Anyway, we pull out whatever ones have a yes value and place them in the contaminants pop-up. So if you look in the lower left, there's only one feature that's available. Now let's just go through some of the functionality of the attribute table. In the options, I'm first going to show you the show and hide columns. I'm going to turn off a couple of columns, mainly because the CEA description and block and lock make this table very large, and it's not as easy to see in this demonstration. So I'm also going to come in here and turn off the labels. So that's how you would set the views for the table if you wanted to see things or not see certain columns. The columns also can be moved. If you click and hold down, you can move them around to your convenience. The next is probably the most powerful thing in here, which is the filter. Which filter can be done through a add expression. You click on add expression, and it adds individual expressions one at a time. Clicking the X to get rid of that. I want to search for CEAs in Trenton. So I'm going to click on the add set. So this adds multiple pieces of information. So I can look for municipality. So I'm setting the field list for municipality, the condition to is, and I am clicking on this input box, this wheel here, which allows me to set the input type. And I'm going to set it to unique. What this does is it goes through our list, looks for all the municipalities, and puts them in a drop-down list. So now I can look for certain things, and I'm going to look for Trenton, and I'm going to choose that. The next thing I want to do is search for sites that have benzene. So that is, I think we have maybe 20 or so compounds that we have pulled out, which we actually say, does the CEA fact sheet indicate that compound? Also, we have those that haven't been pulled out are grouped either VO, pesticides, base neutrals, I forget whichever one, and then if they're not in anything else, it would be in other. So you click benzene is, and I'm going to use this unique again and choose yes. I'm going to click OK. So what this will do, it will take the database, or it will take the layer, and it will filter for only the CEAs in Trenton. So here you can tell there are 15, down here in the lower left, you can tell there are 15 CEAs in Trenton. And I want to zoom to that, so I click on the layer CEA, and I use the zoom to here. And this time, since the CEA layer has been filtered, it will only zoom to the layers that are in this filter that has been set. So here are in blue and purple are the CEAs. There's one down here. I think there's one actually down in this area. Yeah. There's right down here, there's another one. So, but one of the things that there our detailed guidance for this part of the presentation that I've put, I think we've added in, and it adds 2 other bonus filters that you can do. One of the things that it allowed, what I showed was the ability to you can add. I've added a set. I can actually add a single expression, which I can then choose something, and I can set in setting the features. I can display all have to be true, or any variable has to be true, and in arranging these, you can do very complex queries. So I did go through 2 of those examples in the handout. The one thing to remember is, if let's say now you go on and do something else, and you look for a KCSL site up in Trenton, and then you say, oh, let me look for the CEAs in Trenton, or I'm sorry, in Newark, and then you say, okay, let me look for the CEAs in Newark and around another site. You're going to find out that you're not going to find any. It's because you have that filter set. The filter will stay on until you remove it. This is something that I make this mistake all the time. So you have to go back into the CEA layer, hit the filter, and hit this X button to clear out the filter. So you need to be careful to clean up after yourselves after you do this work. So the one thing that is also available is the export selected records to CSV. Unfortunately, I cleared my filter. What I was planning on doing was clicking on it and having it run and creating a CSV for the 15 sites in Trenton, and it would create in the bottom left. It would open up a CSV. I'll do that later on. It didn't, but if the one thing to be careful of is if you run a large number of records, the query will take an extended long period of time. So if basically the process would be click on export, and then you're given, do you want to export it? I'm going to hit cancel. If you hit yes, it would create a CSV file, which you then could open in Excel. Sorry about that. The next thing is this show related records, which is used if you have linked tables, which this case I do not have, so I'll go on to the next one, which is show selected records. So this shows exactly what it says. You click on it, and in the attribute table, only the selected record that I had chosen is displayed in the table. You click on it again, and now the caption has changed to show all records. So you click on it, and now it shows all the in this case, since I got rid of the filter, it shows all 5,000 CEAs. And you know what? I'm going to quickly go through that again, because there are several things that I talk about later on. Sorry about this. This is the problem of doing things live. So now I have those 15. Let me just quickly export, yes. And it should pop up here in the lower left corner. We have been having troubles that some of these layers do not draw. We do have snafus with this, so it should have appeared down here. It did not. But let me go on to the next thing that I want to talk about, which is the sorting of the list. So I want to know the oldest CEA in Trenton for some reason. So I click on the header and click ascending. So the initial CEA in Trenton was issued in 1999. That's still active. So all you are seeing now are active CEAs. The next thing I want to do is that, so this basically sorts. You can sort ascending and descending. Another thing you can do is you can do statistics on if you have a number. If the variable is a number, you can do statistics. So I clicked on the header. Since acres is a number, it comes up with statistics. And here the average size of CEA is 2.2 acres. Not that that's all that important, but if you have information that's numbers, you can do simple statistics on it. The thing you need to be careful of is that it does the statistics on what is being displayed, and so you need to know what is in your viewing window. The next thing across the top here is filter by map extent. And what this does is it adds another filter on top of the filter that I just have set for Trenton. It's a temporary filter, and I click on it, and so basically now it's gone from 15 to 14 records selected. If I zoom in using the zoom box, you see now it's down to 2 features. So this attribute table does exactly what it displays the 2 records that is in the map extent. So if I zoom out, the 2 layers now have become 4. Zoom out again, and so on. So here's the 7. There are 7 features, CEA features that are here. So then I click on it again, and I return back to the original filter that I have set, which is the CEAs for Trenton. So it's 15 results. So the next one's a zoom 2. You click on a record, move it over, and click on the selection handle, and then you zoom to, and it shows the records. The next thing that just you hit the clear selection does what it says, and want to move back to the start, clicking refresh. So just to remind you, when you're done, come back and hit the X and remove the filters. I'm going to open it up now for questions, and then I guess after that we have a 10-minute break.
Yeah, I was actually going to try to keep us on track with the agenda, Don.
Okay.
I don't know. There's several questions, so I don't know how the next part of your presentation goes as far as from a time perspective. So we're almost at the end of the.
Joe's was running a little short, so.
Okay. All right, then I'll take a few questions.
Key questions. Yep.
You got it. 1 second. All right. Let's see. When you search a name, it is only bringing up names that start with the name you entered, or can it search sites with that word anywhere in the name?
Yeah, you would use a wildcard that I talked about. It's the percentage sign, and you would just there's a wildcard that is assigned that is automatically put at the end. But if you would put a % sign before the word, then it will search for anything that has Trenton in it.
Okay, what does the term PAMS_PIN stand for?
Oh, you know what? I will let Joe answer that question. I'm not 100%
Okay.
sure.
All right, I'll give it my best shot. It's basically, it's an identification number used for parcels. So it contains the county and municipality codes and then the block and lot. And that all those strung together are the PAMS pin for a parcel. And each parcel has its own unique PAMS pin throughout the state. It's supposed to have it. There are a couple exceptions, a couple errors out there, but for the most.
He didn't answer the question, but we'll let him get away with it. I don't know what the
Oh,
word
what does the word PAMS actually stand for?
Anyway, go on.
Well, you know what it means. So.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Christina.
I'm going to ask, that's okay. I'm going to do one more question and then we're going to break. When you exit the GeoWeb application, do all filters and settings reset to default or do personal ones remain?
So everything resets back to default. So and we will go through a way in which you can set a bookmarker that will allow you to set up a work a project or something that you can set the zooming and the layers that are shown. It does not save the filters. Cannot save the filters.
Okay. So it is 10:21 right now. Why don't we take a break until 10:30 and we'll see you in a few moments.
Don, when you're ready, if you want to get started with your next portion of the presentation.
Okay. So I just want to end on or go back to the attribute table. To be honest, I'm sorry. I really don't give this explanation justice. It is kind of complicated on some of the ways it interacts with the screen and the layers. Just make sure you keep an eye on how many features are being displayed and what your filters are and what's on the screen. And just be wary that it can be confusing at times with what's being displayed in the attribute table. So now we're going to go into and talk about the map layers, which we had a few questions on. First things first, we'll talk about how to change the appearance of them. So I went into the commonly used layers, and as we talked about, each of them has a symbology attached to them. I'm going to expand. So each of them has a certain symbology attached to it. These are not changeable. We set these symbologies. Next thing we'll talk about is transparencies. So mostly for the polygons. If you come in here and I open up the CEA, so this polygon right here, the transparency can be set from opaque to transparent and anywhere in between. So it's a sliding bar and you slide it and it changes the transparency, allowing the feature beneath to be more visible. The next item down on the 3-dot icon list here is the visibility range. And I'm actually going to do this on the known contaminated site list. So if you click on the set visibility range, on the left-hand side is the county, and the way you set the visibility is these sliding bars. So you move them. So this would set it at the world. These are small scale ranges. Then you get down into the medium scales into the country and metropolitan areas, cities and such. This one's originally set at the county, I think. And then this is where it stops being displayed. So you can actually have it so that the object will stop being displayed. But the large scales are down here at the room level and such. So, and this is where the current map is being drawn. So with this, you can turn things on and off. So if you have the Kcsl layer and you have it filtered, let's say for a certain type of site, an MPL site, for instance, you could change the visibility range to statewide and have the Kcsl site draw the sites that are on the MPL list at a site-wide level, even though the Kcsl layer is designed not to draw at that level. So you can override those sometimes. The next thing that we'll talk about is the disabling the pop-up. Click on it, and that will just disable the pop-up. It will not come up. Show and hide labels. The move up and down feature allows you to the way GIS works is that the deed notice is up on top, so it's drawing on the top of the pile, so to speak, and the imagery is all the way down at the bottom, and it draws successively up here until it gets to the deed notice. So it will lay one on top of the other. So sometimes a layer may not draw very well for you, then you want to move it up in the stack to be more visible. That's how you would do it. You'd have to go in and move it up one at a time. It's kind of a pain. We talked about the attribute table and the show item detail. You click on it, and Joe will talk about this later, but it gives you information about the layer and also opens up the metadata to the layer. Excuse me. So just a little quick demonstration of this. Let me search for a Kcsl site number, right? Search more, apply. So let me get rid of the searches. So here we have an area where there's a lot of things going on. So I'm going to turn on the deed notice, historic fill. So I have CEAs, deed notices, historic fills, and the Kcsl drawing at this time. So the first thing we'll look at here is visibility, and so here this will just a little demonstration. The transparency, I'm going to make the historic fill opaque. So if you notice the Kcsl point, which is the dot, I make it opaque. It now can't be seen. Pretty simple. The next thing is the disable pop-ups. Why would you want to disable a pop-up? Well, especially historic fill, if you click on here, you get one of three, and historic fill is the first one, and historic fill pop-up really does not contain very much information. So if you're doing this a lot, you may find it convenient to disable that pop-up. You click on it, and now it says one of two with the deed notice and CEA as your choices. So it's for you, it's easier to not show the pop-up in that regard. The other thing I've already done, but let me turn them back on, is hiding the labels. So if you show all the labels, sometimes it gets very complicated. In fact, here, if you notice, there are two CEAs here. One of the ways you can tell it is the color. Here's one CEA, which is this large object here. Then you have another CEA like this. and where they overlap is a darker purple. Also the colors interact. So here's a deed notice here, and then when you overlap when it overlaps a CEA, it turns a different shade. So anyway, the labels that we were talking about here, there are two CEAs. This CEA here is labeled. One is not visible because it's under the deed notice. So if you disable or hide the label, you can see that the CEA is now visible. These labels are set by the program and cannot be moved around. You get what the program provides. The next thing that you would want to do is just to show you the moving up. If you move up the historic fill through the label, you can see it changing little colors and that becoming more and more prominent. So if you would want the historic fill to be the most prominent, doing this would make it visually more appearing and making the point. If it was where it was before, the story that you're trying to tell would be lost in the in the CEA / deed notice story. So moving things around can help you a little bit. So now let's actually talk about some of these layers, and I'm just going to touch on them. I won't go into too much detail. Joe will probably touch on most of these. Let me turn off all the layers, but let me turn them on one by one. Let me go into get rid of this search and remove this search. So the deed notice, this basically we talked about the information. It's soil contamination over the remedial standards that is set in a deed. We update this layer monthly. We take in all of your submittals, and when a permit goes out, we add the deed notice and the CEA to these layers, and then every month we post the changes for that month. So the CEA is the same thing. CKEs, we don't have any of those, but the information is fairly similar. The only difference is that it really doesn't have any of this information at the bottom about the site and the document. It has more sparse information. That's updated on a demand when the update is needed. There is no routine update process. And the next layer that we'll talk about is the historic fill. The historic fill is set by the New Jersey Geologic Survey. It's basically 5 acres of filled material determined by either aerial photography or archival map interpretation. For instance, comparing maps from the 1800s, early 1900s to maps in the 1980s at that time. So it's strictly an interpretation, and there's no inference of whether it's contaminated historic fill. It's just the survey was directed by Brownfields bill or law to create a GIS coverage of historic filled areas in New Jersey, and this is that requirement. There is no information in the attribute table, but the one thing that they do have some quadrants, and let me go over to I'm using a bookmark to quickly move someplace. But here in Ellis Island, for instance, there is fill, and then there's this no fill. So some places they actually map no fill where there's a large volume of it. Other places in New Jersey, the quadrangles have not been mapped at all. So let me click the previous extent to go back where I was. The next one down the list was the IEC layer. I'm not going to talk that much about it. This has information about the case that has the IEC attached to it. It also has information about the IEC condition, source, receptor information. This layer is updated daily through our nightly cycle process. It pulls information from that we store in our NGEMS database and creates a layer out of it and publishes it, as I said, nightly. So this information is fairly up to date. The one thing we add to these fields that you can see in the attribute table is to the end, we have a data loaded date, and it has the date we added or the date this layer was created. So this was 10/26/2021. So this date, this IEC layer was generated yesterday morning. It takes a day or two for it actually to get out to the public. It has to go through several hurdles to get it through the published process. The next one we'll talk about is the Kcsl layer, which we've talked a lot about. But the thing that I just wanted to point out is that it does it does have a couple of interesting add-ins. It has a zoom to in Google Maps, so you click on it and it actually will launch Google Maps. So let me just launch it. It launches right to where it is. It doesn't go into Street View. It allows you to do a little bit, but it does put the point where our site is located, and then you can do your evaluation if you need Google Maps in that regard. We find it a really useful interface between this app and others. The other thing that it has is the data miner reports, as it always has. So you can click on it to get the data miner reports for the case. As Joe talked about a little bit, the NGEM sites, that is layer is also updated nightly, as is this next layer, the NGEM sites. Now the NGEM sites are everything the state is regulating. So dentist offices, you name it, they are in this layer. And if you click on it, it has its own pop-up, but it does have a related table that you can access, which gives you information about the, so this actually here is this, gives information about the preferred ID number or PI number, and that it's an SRP site remediation case. Very minimal information, but it tells you who's the lead on the activity. The next thing down the line is the childcare layer. Let me just zoom out and find something and click on it. This layer is updated monthly. We get in a spreadsheet from DCF and we geocode these locations and add them or subtract them depending on this, based on the information we get from DCF, and we get it on a monthly basis. Once again, this has that data load date at the end here. So the last time we did this was just a couple of days ago. So this is accurate as of 10/14 based on what DCF gives to us. So this is one of those receptors we've pulled out into this commonly used layers that are very useful. And it basically has information about the child care center, contacts, and such. Next in the list is the Purveyor, and what the Purveyor is area where water service is available. It doesn't mean that the house actually has water supplied to it, but it's just that there is water lines in this area. This was updated last in February of 2019. And basically it has the purveyor's name. It has a link that you can click and launch a report if you want. Excuse me. The next is the schools. The symbology is very hard to see. We strain our eyes with that a lot. And then there are some of these other receptors that we've included. I'm going to just mention that the wellhead protection area was last updated May 2018, and the non-community was February of 2015. This information I got from the metadata. Another reason why you want to go into the metadata, find out how recent of the information, how recent is the information. And the last one I'll mention in any detail is the parcel layer. This parcel information is generated at the municipality layer level. It is given to the counties who bring it into one app for the county, which is then sent to the state, who compiles it and provides this layer as the parcels for the entire state of New Jersey. If you click on a parcel, it has the owner information, property information. So up here, we've isolated the PAMS pin on top, which we talked about a little bit earlier, and the owner information. And then down here, you get the block and the lot number, and then additional information about the site and the type of what class property it is. If you have any questions about this, you click the 3-dot icon and you click view an attribute, I'm sorry, it's not that. You go over here, click the 3-dot icon, and you show information detail, and you get the metadata for the information. It has information, it details what each one of these fields represents. The one thing to be wary of is that, the state has published this and created it in October 2020. It's updated last July of 2021, but the municipalities may not have given the most up-to-date information up the chain. So be wary of some of the information. You're probably going to find that some of the property information may not be 100% accurate. So that's the information in our commonly used layers. Let me talk about here in this layer list tool here to the far right. Excuse me. So we have statewide layers. So you click on the statewide layers. just basic, the really one thing of importance to pull out of this conversation is statewide building footprints. Just brings a layer of the actual, there's a interpretation from an aerial imagery of the footprint of the building. The next thing, so then they have others, railroads and such. The next group is the sites and facilities. So this is where the DEP has put most of the layers that you would normally use. However, for instance, CEAs, CKEs, IECs, and such have been pulled out into our commonly used layer. The one thing that to highlight in here is a dry cleaners of New Jersey. This is active dry cleaners from their air. I think it's from their air or their but information in NGEMS. We have identified dry cleaners. The other thing to be is that we have filtered the CEA layer for just historic fill CEAs, and so that there is a layer in here just of, so see, this is where things get rather confusing on the map if you don't clean up. And let me demonstrate something here. So I have historic fill collected here. I'm going to clear all the layers. So I'm going to turn off all layers. It will only turn off all the layers in this group. So it did not turn off my historic CEA VIX. If you want to turn a layer in, you need to go to the group it's located. So here's a map of all the historic VIX. Let me rephrase that. Here's a layer of CEAs that are only for historic fill, sometimes referred to as VIX. We also have solid waste landfills and UST facilities in here. Next one down is our receptor layer that we've pulled out most of the information. Several of them we've also pulled out and put in our commonly used layers. But you have C1 waters, head of tides, SW classifications, and wetlands, to name a few. As a geologist, this is the next one is the most fun layer, and I won't go into any of the details I bored my friends with, but it has basically three groups. It has dikes, faults, and folds in the structural component. It has surficial geology, aquifers, and a general surficial geology. And then it has bedrock, a group of aquifers, geology. Then it has a generalized bedrock and then a detailed bedrock. These are maintained and published by the Jersey Survey. The next thing that it does have are cross sections. So you click on it, it'll bring up a line, and I will have to demonstrate. So this is a surface water, or I'm sorry, surficial geology cross section that is available through this tool. And it also has a cross section for bedrock. The other thing that isn't used that much is the bedrock surface water, or I'm sorry, surface topography. And these are contours. So these are contours of the interface between the bedrock and surface geology, the elevation of that interface. So if you click on a contour line, and that's 0, so that's 0 feet above mean sea level is where the interface between the surface geology and the bedrock is. So if you click on a contour line, and that's 0 feet above mean sea level is where the interface between the surface geology and the bedrock is. So if you click on a contour line, and that's 0 feet above mean sea level is where the interface between the surface in this case probably till and the basalt material is. You click over here, that is 200. So that is the interface between the bedrock surface water surface interface. Now leaving geology, we have planning areas. The one thing that we did not add in our commonly used layers that is related to SRP is the brownfields development areas. They are available here. And also along with the highlands, pinelands, typical planning areas, we've also added newer ones such as the overburdened communities, the New Jersey urban enterprise zones, and I think open space is also in there. The other thing it's in here is I think New Jersey land use. Yep, here it is right here, which is very useful. The last is landscape, which is basically habitat and endangered species related. And then we have a group of imagery we make available. We have the 12 years of imagery from the 1920 coastal imagery to the 2020 imagery that we use as our layer in the commonly used layer. Now, not all of these layers will draw. For instance, coastal imagery does not draw in this area, which I clicked, but the 30 black and white imagery is statewide. And then we jump to the 70s. So our coverage is very limited in the 60s and before. The one thing that will just close looking at is this topographical image. You click on it and it brings up a 2010 topographic map, or the USGS quads can contain useful information. There is a historic imagery that was there. It disappeared. Trust me, yesterday it was there, but it isn't available. You know what? Anyway. So we do add and subtract layers very rarely, but at times. So that could be what the cause of that is. The one thing that's easy to display here, which Joe will get into a little bit later, is you turn on the 2020 imagery and then you want to see the 2000 you need to be wary of the place in the sequence where these layers are placed. Since this is the highest, it draws on top, and so the black and white imagery that draws up, clicking the 2020 will override it. So the future layers that I want to emphasize again is that we hopefully are working on the release of the SRP PI layer, which has all the cases we've worked on, active, closed, pending. The only exception is UHOT cases, closed UHOT cases. That layer will probably be added to the commonly used layers. It will also be added in the search functions here, which will allow you to more robust searches. And at that point, I will close for questions.
Okay, thank you, Don. We have time for a few questions. Just remember that If we don't answer your question today during the presentation, you'll get an email with the answer. And in addition, Joe Stefanoni is also going through the chat and answering them, and you can, through the Q&A box, and answering questions so you can see the answers to those questions as well. So the first question I'm going to ask is, will the original Brownfields historic fill layer ever be updated?
The survey is charged with that. It will, and they are the ones in charge of that. I don't think there's any money on the table to do that, but it probably will not be updated.
Okay. Is the superficial geology / bedrock geology listed in depth below grade or feet above MSL?
So the interface is feet above mean sea level. So it's an elevation, not a depth. So it's kind of hard. You have to actually do math. You have to know the XY, the elevation of your point before you can look at the depth. You know, if you're installing a well, how much overburden might there be? And it's a rough estimate at best.
Okay, here's another question. If you zoom in to one subject parcel, i.e. potentially too close in, will we lose the ability to see plotting of applicable layers, where we'll need to zoom to see each of them individually?
So I mentioned that some layers, I don't think we have any layers that do not display totally zoomed in. Joe's in charge of setting that feature, but I don't think we have that problem. Only reason why I mentioned it, we had a layer that, for instance, the labels on the roads are roads. You zoomed in too close, the labels disappeared. But Joe can talk more on that quickly.
Yeah, Don's correct. We have not set any minimal zoom restrictions, so that if something's there and you zoom in extremely close in, you will still see that. That's one thing we didn't want to restrict, because it's one of the things that we found, I personally found annoying with the previous version of GeoWeb. When you would zoom in too closely, you would lose certain points and things, and you have to zoom back out again. So we've made the effort to not have that happen for this application.
Okay, I think at this point we're going to move on. So Don, if you want to finish up your portion of the presentation.
Yeah, and Alicia, the questions, this next part is really, it's kind of fluff. So I am going to go through it very quickly, and probably we don't need any questions on this.
Okay.
Okay, so the capture, I'm sorry, so capture coordinates is something that someone talked about. So we will strike that recommendation. The capture coordinates that I'll talk about now is it's kind of clunky, but there is an app here in the bottom left corner that I don't know if people can see it. There's a star. I'm hovering over it now. It says click to enable clicking map to get coordinate. So you click on that little star and the box opens to the right and it says click the map to get coordinate. It's very simple. You click on the map and the coordinate has been has filled in this text box that is very, very small in the lower right corner. So you would highlight it, you would hit Control C and copy it, go wherever you wanted to and paste it, and use it in that manner. The one thing that for some reason these coordinates, when you paste them, are the font is white, so you're probably going to have to highlight them again and do change the font color. I know that some people have told me about pasting without adding that, but it always doesn't. It doesn't always work at times. So anyway, just be wary of the font being, in this case, it's white here. And what I do is I double click on the coordinate and I hold the shift key in again, and or I'm sorry, if you double click, hold the shift key and click, it highlights everything. I found that to be very useful. Whether you have your own little trick, that's fine. But basically, it's pretty straightforward. So you click on the map, it changes the XY coordinate down here in this box. Click on the map, it changes the XY. Unfortunately, you have to go in and extract the coordinate from this box every time. There is no way to record them. Also, once it's activated, when the select get coordinate tool is activated, and this box is enabled, it stays active. So you really, you can pan, but you really can't do anything else on the map. You click on it and it locates the get coordinate tool all over the map. So that's how you would find an XY coordinate. It finds it in state plane coordinates. We deal in state plane coordinates, so that's basically the default. If you click on the arrow, you can do it in Web Mercator and 1984. That's the only other option that you have to gather coordinates. So if you change this and you clicked, the box would show in that coordinate system. The one thing that we want to talk about just quickly is, so you found a site, it's located in one location, and you say, oh, that site's in the wrong location. How do you notify us to change the layer? It can be done for the Kcsl layer or for childcares. Anytime you see something where a point is located improperly. If a CEA or a deed notice was located improperly, you would submit it to us through our submittal process, a normal submittal process. You would through an email to SRP GIS underscore CEA for CEAs underscore DN for deed notice. But that's where we accept those. We accept coordinate changes for a point in the SRP GIS email address. And basically, so once you've grabbed this this point, you would and let me switch to here. We have a I attached guidance to the training, 6-page guidance. It goes into real detail on how to do this. But basically, after getting the XY coordinate, this explains how to do that. You decide whether and we require center of site. So we want to do it, since it's for the entire site, we need the point to be in the center of the site, usually the parcel centroid if it's a single parcel. And you would get that XY coordinate. You would copy this information in this area right here, and you would fill in the information and stick it into an email with us, sent to GIS. Put in the PI, the pref ID that you're requesting a change for, the words location update so we don't lose it in this mailbox, and then fill in the information with the X and Y coordinate, center of site because it's a center of site, and the method, in this case it's NJ-GeoWeb that we would use. And then you send it to us, we would evaluate it and make the changes as applicable. So that's how you would request changes. the next thing that we will touch upon is markers and bookmarks. And I am going to cut that off and just say that markers are placed using the 3-dot icon, and most of the when you use the 3-dot icon, it allows you in the lower right corner to select add marker. This puts a temporary point so you can come back to that location at any time. You have to do it through panning and zooming, but you can come back to that location. Bookmarks, on the other hand, copy the scale of the screen and the layers that you have active at the time, and it will save them for your use in future projects. At that point, I'm going to stop and ask for questions or break.
We'll do a little bit of both. How's that?
It's your game, Christina.
No, Don, it's yours. Would the department consider updating the historic fill / no fill plotting using LSRP and deed notice information?
We have
Would you like
talked
to
about
wait to answer that?
that is something that would have to be gone through our upper management.
Okay.
It's been discussed, but we do have in the deed notice layer, we have those deed notices that are for historic fill. So that is a contaminant of concern in the deed notice. So for what we did for CEAs, we could make available those deed notices, basically filter the layer and display only those deed notices that have historic fill in the as a contaminant. The problem with that is that historic fill field is not very I'm not going to use the word accurate. It isn't filled in all the time, so we would be missing deed notices, and we weren't concerned about not displaying everything. So.
Okay. Will it ever be possible to obtain copies of remedial phase reports by clicking on a Kcsl icon in GeoWeb?
That is a yes. That should be. I am not one to deal with the data miner reports. That is through their process. But if they make it available, so if the data miner reports, you can click on a data miner report and get a phase document, then you also would be able to do it through GeoWeb. It would follow their lead. So they are the lead in that. We just put a link to do whatever they are doing.
Okay. Is there a layer for determining the groundwater quality classification for an area, like, class 1, class 2?
Not at this time.
Okay.
And I just want to add one real quick thing to that. You
sure.
can kind of look at the, what aquifers are associated with a given area, and especially with like the, where you have a aquitard, because you know what the major aquitards are. So if you see that, you can, do a little more investigation, but at least you're potentially in the ballpark. And also if you're in the Pinelands or the Highlands, or actually just the Pinelands, you would fall into a class 1 aquifer designation.
Okay, I'll take one last question. How do you print out or make a PDF of the information? Is this something Joe might go over?
You know what? That's a lead-in segue to this afternoon, or
beautiful. So we'll keep everybody excited to return after break. So let's take a 10-minute break. Or sort of a break that's about 8 minutes. Let's do come back at 11:25 and resume with Joe, I believe, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, see you all in a few.
All right, everybody, it is 11:25, so we're going to get started again. We're going to bring Joe Stefanoni in. He is from the Bureau of Information Systems, and he is going to finish out the rest of the training. So, Joe, whenever you're ready.
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. Hi, I'm Joe Stefanoni, and I've been with the department for over 30 years. And some of you LSRPs out there may remember me from my bus days because I was in bust for about 18 years, and I worked with a lot of different consultants at that time. But I'm going to take up my portion of the training today is going to be demonstrating the various tools that Don talked about, and also trying to work it in with somewhat semi-real life situations using our various different data sets that we provide in this application. And one of the questions I saw was, what's the main difference between this application? And it's not just an organization of the data, but it's, between this and the NJ-GeoWeb, it's also trying to make it so that it's more advantageous for an LSRP, because we have all the data that we are hoping that you would need in order to be able to deal with the specifics that our regs require in terms of doing a PASI and things like that. So I don't want to take up too much time in my intro, but we think, that we were given the opportunity to produce this by the main GIS people in our department, and I think, we've taken it and tried to make it as user-friendly as possible, and also to get the most out of it for everyone. And your feedback will help us in continuing to be able to do this and to improve this product. So I'm going to start with one of the tools Don mentioned was the swipe tool. And before I go into that, though, I'm going to talk about the bookmark tool. What's nice about the bookmark tool is if you set this up, this is the one thing that will be retained when you close the application and reopen it. You will still have your bookmarks. So I set a number of bookmarks a while ago. And so when I click on the tab, and to set a bookmark, you just zoom into the area and you hit add. And the other nice thing about this is not only does the bookmark take you back to whatever area you're interested in, it also turns back on whatever layers you had on at that time. So I'm going to go to where I grew up in the town of Roebling in Brownfield County. And as you look, you can see it's dominated by this large area of what looks like grassland, but it's where the former Roebling Steel Company was. So this is 2020 imagery. And if you wanted to see what this looked like prior to everything being torn down, and everyone's familiar with this kind of stuff, but I want to show you specifically the swipe tool. So I can turn on this 1977 Thailand's imagery, and I could go back and forth and turn one off and turn one on, and see what it looked like and what it looks like currently. But this swipe tool is really cool because with the two aerial imageries on, you can just go back and forth and see specific. If you want to see a specific area and you want to quickly see what it is now and what it was, the swipe tool is very useful for that. And another thing that we have in this imagery section are topographic maps. So I can also use that in the swipe tool. And obviously it looks like this topographic map may be a little outdated because it's still showing buildings at the site, but you get the idea how you can use the swipe tool to be able to go back and forth between various sets of imagery. And you can use that for any of the imagery. And the color imagery, you can also use it for other things, including the topographic map. But in general, it's not as useful. It's more useful with the imagery. So that's my first demo. So one of the things that I like to do, because I don't want to go in and reset everything, turn off everything, and try to find all the layers I had on and turn them off if I want to, go back to where it was initially the setup. I use this reload this page tool. So when I click on that, it's going to restart the application with all the default settings. It's my way of cleaning things up. So now for my next demonstration, we're going to start with using the search tool like Don showed. Actually, I'm going to use the parcel search tool here. And I want to get to a site in Sussex County in Sparta Township. So I can scroll down. And then I happen to know the block and lot that I'm looking for, so I could type that in. It's 26002 and 18. Run the query. And it takes me to this parcel, and the known contaminated site that's located there is called AO Polymer Corporation. It's actually an MPL site. So I can turn off this parcel search query, and that will disappear. But it's still showing on the map because it's in the commonly used layers, so I can turn that off. But now I wanted to show you quickly what's in the Kcsl Pop-Up. So it gives you, the generic information about the site. And as you scroll down, you'll see that there's some links in here. And one of them is this view in Google Maps. And this is kind of neat, because you click on this and it actually takes you to that exact same location in Google Maps. And sometimes, Google Maps may have information that's more helpful for what you're trying to do. And, you have access to satellite imagery, you have access to the Google Street View, and it's taking you right to that exact site location. So you don't have to copy and paste and try to find the site all over again. You can go directly there. We'll also have some data miner reports that you can launch from here that's specific to this case. And I happen to have I'm not going to run it because sometimes it can get bogged down, but I have an example of one that I've run already for this site. And this is the kind of information that you would receive. So it's showing you all the activities associated with this case, and then you can go in and get more information about each activity. And that was the site detail report. You also see there's that case tracking tool by select PI number. So now as you're looking through this information, some of the things you might see, and you might see something you're not really sure of. So this has remedial level D. Well, there's a lot of people out there that might not know what remedial level D means. And one of the ways that you can find out about it is you go to the known contaminated site list, you click on the 3 buttons here. If I scroll down, this is what Don talked about. So I click the show items details. So this screen pops up, it gives you information about what's being displayed as far as known contaminated sites and what they consist of and how this layer was generated. Then you can go into the metadata, which is detailed GIS information. And this is where you can find out information about a specific field and the values in that field. It's a little daunting when you look at it. The main thing you want to do if you're looking for a specific attribute, what we call attribute information or information about a field, you just scroll down until you get to this entity and attribute information field or a section. And then as you look through this, you'll see all the different, it says attribute labels. So we're looking for the one that is specific for the remedial level. And here it is right here. And then it provides all the values. So A, B, C1, C2, C3, and then finally we get to level D. And level D is a multi-phase remedial action, multiple sources, releases to multimedia, including groundwater. So it's typical of an MPL site. It's one of the most contaminated sites that you're dealing with within the state. Oops. So I'm going to go back to my map now. So as an LSRP, sometimes you're going to be receiving GIS data, and let me bring a folder over, something you might see. So this is what we call a shapefile. If you look at it in GIS, it's just going to be one file with a .shp extension. But when it's looked at in Windows Explorer, there's a number of files that make up a shapefile. And you really don't, unless you have GIS software, you have no way of knowing what's on this. But if you were to take these files and zip them, which is simple to do, you can then add that zipped file to your map document and actually see it. So I'm going to show that. So we go to this add data button, and you can see there's different formats. We go to file, and it shows you all the different formats you can add, and one of them is a zip shapefile. Just keep in mind that that 1,000 record limitation for display also applies here, so that only whatever your data set you're adding cannot consist of more than 1,000 records, or it will not work. So let me go back to my zipped shapefile, and I just take it, and this is for the AO Polymer CEA. So once I add it, so you can see how it's been added to the map, and not only that, I have the ability to turn it off and on here. So now I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So I want to know, I've been asked, are there any public water supply issues associated with this CEA? So one of the layers that we've provided is this wellhead protection area for community supply wells. So it's basically showing you what the 2-year, 5-year, and 12-year anticipated capture zone is for a well that would be located at the center of this bullseye. We don't provide the actual well information itself because of Homeland security restrictions, but it's pretty easy to intuit where the well would be located. So next I'm going to demonstrate another tool. It's called the measurement tool. And whenever you hover over any of these tools, you'll see the name of the tool pop up. And for this tool, you can measure an area, or you can measure in distance, or you can put a point on the map and get coordinates. But unfortunately, that's only in lat long, not in New Jersey State Plain. So I'm going to click on this measurement tool, and it's by default, it's measuring in miles. I want to set it to US feet. And I want to see what the point from the closest edge of the CEA to the approximate center, what the distance is to the approximate center of the well. It's about 1,300 feet. So obviously, you can use this measurement tool in a lot of different capacities, but this I just wanted to demonstrate it quickly. So let me bring that back, because even though you close out the tool, it does not clear. You actually have to hit the clear button. So as an LSRP, you may want to create a map to send to someone. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate next. So another one of the tools that's provided is this draw tool. And I'm going to go through a few simple things that you can do with the draw tool. One of which is outline a polygon. So I'm going to turn off at this point, I'm going to turn these back on later, but I'm going to turn off the polymer, and I'm going to, whatever I create here is going to be, the CA I turned off, whatever I create here is going to be added up here that I can also turn off and on. So what I want to do is I want to create a site boundary. So I go to the Parcel tool, or Parcel Layer, I'm sorry. And here's the parcel for the site. Then I want to select from one of these. I'm going to make it semi-transparent. And I'm also going to show an area measurement when I draw this that'll appear on the map in acres. So I click back on this. And the nice thing is, and there's a little message here, it says you can click on the control button to enable snapping. So when I click on control, it automatically goes to the perimeter of the parcel that I'm interested in. I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to make it line up. And I'm just doing this quickly. I'm not looking to produce a masterpiece. So now I have my site boundary, and it tells me what the acreage is on the map. Next, I'm going to turn off the parcel layer, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit, bring back in the wellhead protection area, zoom out a little further, center it, and I want to add that measurement again that I just done, but this time I want to put it into the map itself. So I'm going to bring the CA back, bring up a line, choose the style, and I want to show the length measurement in feet. So I'm just going to click, go to the approximate center, And there you go. So I have that. And then finally, to finish up, I'm going to add text on the map. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to put text to identify the CEA boundary. So I'll type that in. I'll keep the default, text size, and I'll change the color. Let's say, go with a blue. And then all I need to do now is just click on the map and that'll automatically appear. So here's a simple map. So what can I do with it now? Well, this is where the print command comes into play. When I click on the print command, it does take some time to open, so bear with me. But you can change your map title. This might be where you either get up to get a cup of coffee or hit the restroom. By the time you come back, hopefully this will actually be opened. I'm not sure why it takes this long, but it does. Anyway, I'm gonna give it a few more seconds. Hopefully, oh, there we go. Okay, so it comes up with the default layout setting, which I'm going to go with, and then your format is, I would go with a PDF, but there are a bunch of different formats that you can print out in, and you can have some advanced settings if you didn't want to actually see the legend and things like that. So I can run this, and it will take quite some time. So instead of doing that, I'm going to open up once again a PDF that I've already created for the same exact map and show you what it would look like. So it's a pretty nice map. I mean, you have, I'd put a title in, so you have a title and it shows everything you wanted to show. It has your legend. Unfortunately, the lines that I put on the map, you don't have the ability to label them directly. So it's going to come up with this, override. But, from here, you could either download the map and send it to someone as an electronic copy, or just save it as a PDF. This is different. What you're looking at now is an actual downloaded map that I opened and saved. When you run the tool, it's going to come up with something slightly different, but it does take quite some time. So I'm not going to run that and have that happen. Waste time with that. So that is a demonstration, my first two demos, and I'm going to open it up to questions now if anyone has any questions.
Okay, thanks, Joe. We have a few questions. So the first one is, where are the bookmarks stored, i.e. in browser cookies?
That's a good question. I do not know where they're stored. They're stored in the application itself. So when you open this map document up again, they will be there. I don't know behind the scenes where it's being stored.
We will find. Joe, I did not answer that because of that, but we will find out and add it to the answers.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question is, will we be able to retrieve a download or output of a selected group of layers, or the commonly used layers, that reports everything co-located within the target plot slot?
Can you read that again? Because that was pretty.
I don't think at this moment we're not looking at to do something like that, but future development, we're looking to enhance GIS use as much as possible.
Okay, the next question is, can a north arrow be added to the print function map?
Yeah, let me go back. I wasn't sure. There isn't a north arrow on there. I'm surprised. Okay. We'll have to look into that. I assume they would have one, and they don't. In the advanced settings, that might be a possibility, but like I said, unfortunately, well, we'll see. Let's see what we have here. Does not look like it. I'm surprised that they do not include a north arrow. This is an out-of-the-box tool. produced by Esri. So we don't, unfortunately, we don't have the ability to add something like that. To easily add something like that. We could look into it though.
Okay, we just have time for one more question. So let's see. If you use add data and select to zip the shapefiles, I can save that to my computer and then add it to a map if I'm working directly in ArcGIS, correct?
When you say working directly, you can add a zip, you can add a shapefile to ArcGIS. Are you talking about, I don't know if they're talking about this application or other ArcGIS applications.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. Oh,
Maybe
this
we'll leave that
application.
as oh, okay. I was going to say leave that
Yeah,
as
she just
unanswered.
commented this application.
But for this
So,
application, yeah, you'd be able to work in during this session, and then once the session's over, you would, you'd have to re-add that if you wanted to work with it further. If that's the question, I'm not sure. But to create a shapefile, yeah, this application doesn't have the ability to create a shapefile.
okay, so I think we are ready to move on to your next demonstrations, Joe. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, so once again, I'm going to hit the reset button to reload. Clears everything. I make use of that all the time because it really does help if you're doing a number of different things. So for my third demonstration, I'm going to be working with the Iec layer. These are our sites which have, the most environmental concern, our highest environmental concern sites, because the public is actually being potentially exposed to contamination, whether it be through potable well contamination, vapor intrusion, or actual direct contact, which thankfully we only have a very small handful of direct contact IECs. And Don's talked briefly about this, but I just want to, so this is our Iec layer, and since it's less than 1,000 records, it will display throughout, from this projection. You can be zoomed out to the entire state and still see all the points. So I'm going to use our Iec search, and for this particular case, I happen to know the pref ID number. So it's taking me to a site by the name of Ronson Metals. And I'm going to close out of here and just click on the pop-up. So one of the fields in here is the activity, and you can see it's PFR for this IEC. So that means it's a publicly funded case that's being handled internally by the department. And it's located within Newark. And for the IEC description, not all cases, but in a lot of cases, it will identify the main contaminant. In this case, it's TCE, and by the symbology, and also here, it's telling you it's a VI case, vapor intrusion. And the purple coloration means that it's in progress, has not been completed as far as the receptors are concerned. And a lot of times what happens is they deal initially with the impacted receptor, and then they have to step out and see how many other nearby, especially with vapor intrusion, nearby structures may have been impacted with vapors. And as they continue to step out, they won't be able to we won't be able to say that the receptor has been addressed until they've identified and addressed all the properties that may have been impacted. So going back to the Iec pop-up, I'll show you real quickly what the data miner report would kick out. So this is nice. It has the case manager that's handling the IEC within the department. And in this case, it's publicly funded, but if you're an LSRP and you're working on an IEC, your name and contact information would be present here. And then also we have the receptor and source information that's all included in this IEC data miner report. And then the IEC definition that Don talked about, if you click on that, it gives you additional information if you want to brush up on exactly what an IEC is. All that's linked in here. And just real quickly, because Don did show this also, this particular IEC receptor control status is in progress. And it also tells you what the remedial measure is. In this case, it's sub-slab depressurization systems that are being installed. So if you are an LSRP and you have a situation where you need to do vapor intrusion investigations on nearby structures, one of the layers that we have under this NJ statewide is this statewide building footprints derived from impervious surfaces. So here's the symbology for the layer. When I turn it on, this layer is not 100% accurate, and give it some time because it will display more fully. As you can see, this was done a few years ago, so this particular structure is not accurate. This one is missing, but for the most part, it does capture the buildings that are nearby, and with a polygon. And what's nice about this layer is if you click on this, it'll tell you the approximate square footage of that structure, which I know as an LSRP you need to know in terms of how much sampling needs to be conducted for vapor intrusion, for subslab sample locations and things. So that's all I wanted to show you with that particular layer, just to make you aware that it does exist and it might be helpful. So another thing, when you are submitting data to the department, electronic data, HASite data, they may cross your desk and you'll get this KML file that comes back in an email from us, and it's called sample loc, and it tells you what version of the EDSA checker that was used. You can actually take this and drag and drop it into the map and see what the sample locations are for the HASite data. Once again, provided that there's not more than 1,000 records, which shouldn't be the case, but for some of your larger sites, it may be an issue. The only thing that you need to do is it needs to be renamed. It has capital KML. When we send it to you, you have to rename it with a small lowercase KML. So I go back to my Add Data button, go to Files, and you can see KML is one of those. Let's go back. So, and I take it and drag it and drop it, and I know this HASite data is associated with Ronson Metals. And then when I click on one of the points, it's telling me what the sample ID is. It tells me the depth interval, which is 3.5 to 4 feet. Then a matrix and sample loc type. So it's a soil sample and specifically a subsurface soil sample. And then it shows you the distribution of where the samples were collected. So it's kind of a way to, if this data crosses your desk, to see what it is that you're going to be submitting, because there will be a KML file that's generated when you run the EDSA checker, or after you submit it and you receive a KML file. But it gives you an idea on what, because otherwise you may not be aware, because you have, a GIS specialist or someone that's preparing all this information for you, or the lab sending you data. And the other thing, and I'm not going to do it, but you can also double click. I'll be doing this for a different demonstration in a few minutes, but you can actually double click on this, and if you have Google Earth installed on your PC, it will open this file in Google Earth. You'll be able to view it in that format. Okay, so that was a demonstration of various things you can do with our Iec layer and different resources that are available. Next, I'm going to start to demonstrate some tools that are helpful in looking at things that are nearby a site, which is something that the department it's definitely an important role with what you need to do as far as receptor evaluations. So the first tool I'm going to look at, once I reload this page, oh, I'm sorry. See, I shouldn't have. Let me go back. I need to go back to that site. I'll get there real quickly. Lesson to be learned. Do not reload the page until you need to. Make sure. So now we're back to Ronson Metals. I am going to keep the Kcsl on. I'm going to turn on a couple of other layers, our denotice layer and our CEA layer, and also some receptors, childcare and schools. And then we have a tool that's called Near Me up here. And this is basically going to identify everything that's within a specified radius of a site. So when I click on this tool, I can either put in the specific address that I'm interested in, or I can use this to click on it and find and set the location for where I want the tool to run from. And then I can specify the distance. I'm going to keep the 1,500 feet. So I'm click on this, click on the Ronson metal location. And then it tells me how many CAs, known contaminated sites, denotices, childcare centers. So, and then if I click on here, I can see specific information about this. So this is basically a tool that's set up to work within the mapping application itself. And you can always, print a map of this, and if you wanted to, and you'd be able to view different areas or different pieces of information, or identify different records that are retrieved. So that's what the Near Me tool does. Next, my next demonstration, I'm going to show you another tool that's more useful in actually extracting data from a map, but it's similar to the Near Me tool. First, I'll need to reload my screen. Okay, so another search capability we have is this county municipality search. I'm going to go back to Burlington County and specifically the Cinnaminson. Hit apply. It's taking me to Cinnaminson, and it's highlighted on the map, and you can see all the known contaminated sites that are coming up in this area. So I'm really just interested in NPL sites. So I'm going to use this filter tool. And once you open it, you come up with a blank screen. There's only one place to click. So even if you don't know anything about the tool, you would just go to that location and click on it. And then it's going to ask you to specify the layer that you want to set the filter on. In this case, I want to do the known contaminated sites list. And then I'm just going to add an expression similar to what Don was doing through the attribute table. And I want to just see NPL sites. So if I go to NPL status, I'm going to keep it as is. Go to unique because I'm not sure what the fields values are. And I just want to see final NPL sites. So you can see immediately it went from the whole screen being filled with those to just NPL sites. And the specific one I'm interested in is the Cinnaminson groundwater. Next, I'm going to turn on the CA, and you're going to see there is a CA for Cinnaminson groundwater. And so I want to know what's within a specified distance of this CA. And like I said, I could use the Near Me tool, but I want to demonstrate another tool that's called the screening tool. So I'm going to click on that. And once again, I can use an address. I can draw a polygon or a point or a circle and have everything identified within that area. Or I can even add a shapefile and use that. But in this case, I'm going to use this select by rectangle, and it's going to ask me what layer do I want to select, and it has select all. I want to turn that off, and I just want to select the groundwater Cinnaminson groundwater CEA. Then it's asking me what distance do I want to show the results within. Well, I'm going to scale this back a little bit. Instead of a half mile, I'm going to go to feet and do 1,000 feet. And Now I can just select that. It automatically went out to 1,000 feet from the boundary of the CA. When I hit report, it shows me everything that was located within that area. So unfortunately, it does not turn on the layers, but I can see there's 3 child care centers. So if I come over to here and I turn that on, I can see those, and then it'll have the information about each of those over here. And it has a number of other sites, including a school. So if I turn the school layer on, it's difficult to see, but there is a school somewhere in there. It's unfortunately the symbol for the schools layer. We don't have control over that, but it blends into the background very easily. So once I have all this information, I can either download everything where there's a record that appears as a CSV file, or I can print a report, and that will summarize all this information and provide it in a report format along with a map. So, this also takes some time to run, and I don't want to waste people's time, but this is the output for the report. And it's nice. You do have the ability to give it a name, and you have your map. Once again, it does not include a north arrow, unfortunately, but it does have all your information. And I think the reason that it doesn't include a north arrow is because when we work with Srp products, north is always up to the top, towards the top of the map. That's how everything is situated. Then it gives you a summary of what was found. So it's telling you everything that was within that specified distance, all the different, how many layers were looked at, and whether or not something was found, and if so, how many records were within that area. And then it goes into specific information about each of those layers and where information was found, and all the attribute information for each record. So you could print that out and have information about your site. In this case, it would be the sentiments in CEA. So going back to this, one of the things that was identified for this area, which I thought was interesting because I would have never guessed it, is it says that there's a category 1 water within this. And I have to, so if I go back to receptors and turn that layer on, you can see where this little portion of the surface water body extends in. And when I click on that, it's Pomposton Creek. So it's a freshwater, non-trout C1 surface water body. And C1 is basically, they're protected. They're the most protected level of surface water within the state. And now I'm going to open up the questions.
I thought we were doing a poll question here.
Okay, let's do we'll do a poll question, then we'll go to questions.
Okay, thanks. So let me give Tyrone and Anthony a moment to set it up. Okay, the SRP GIS layer that identifies the highest priority sites within the site remediation program is called 1, the known contaminated sites layer, 2, the wellhead protection areas layer, or not layer, excuse me, 3, immediate environmental concerns, or 4, classification exception areas. If you could choose your answer. And just a reminder, in the chat, we've posted the course evaluation. It's a SurveyMonkey. It's there for your use. So that would be great. Where are we at with this? Okay, just a couple more seconds, Joe, and then we don't have a terrible amount of questions, but I'll ask a couple.
So Christina, can I jump in with a question that I accidentally deleted?
Absolutely. Go for it, Don.
Sorry about that. Joe, putting a 200 or 400 foot buffer around a point, it's very simple, right?
Yes. So if I go back to this tool, the screening tool, I can just place a point on the map wherever, wherever I'm interested in, and then specify the distance of 400 feet. And if I wanted to click on this building, hit report, and it's doing that for me right there. So you can also put a polygon, you can put a point.
So that's one way
align.
she could. And to be honest, I'm sorry I accidentally deleted the entire question, but I know that had something to do with 400 feet. If that doesn't answer it, if you could ask it again, and we will make sure.
I think I see the question here. Can a circle be added to the map that shows a boundary from a point, for example, 400 feet out? So that's the question. It's still, I can still see it. So, so we're good. So I'll either note that that's answered or have, I know Alyssa and Tyrone and Anthony are doing that as well. All right, and then I'm going to ask one other question. Some of the questions are down in the weeds or they're comments, so I'm just going to ask this one question and then we'll move on. Can you download CSVs through this program, or are shapefiles available for Polygon download? Do you know? If you don't,
well, you can download
CSVs.
You can download CSVs, and if it has coordinate, like our point layers all have coordinates associated with them in New Jersey State Plains. So you could download the CSV and then create a GIS layer from that, if you have the software to be able to do so. Or you can add the CSV back into another, into a map, someone else using this application through this add data button. Well, actually, I'm saying that, but I stand corrected. You can only add it back in if it's in lat and lawn.
Yeah, but I think also the question deals with the fact that this program does not create shapefiles. I think that's also at the heart of the issue is that this is a free application generated by Esri, and as such, creating software is not something that does.
Okay.
That being said, just real quickly, any of the GIS layers that you see here that we're working with are available through our GIS, through our main GIS web group department webpage, and they have open data source, and you can download shapefiles and work with that data.
All right. So we have a brief break on the schedule. Let's just take a break until 12:15. We'll come back and Joe will finish up for the day. We'll take more questions after Joe's finished. So see you all at 12:15.
Okay, everyone, it is 12:15, so we are going to get started again. So Joe, when you are ready, you can finish out the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Alyssa. So I have a couple more demos, and the first one I'm going to start with is our third tool that we think would be very helpful to LSRPs, and that is our public notification tool. So before I go into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the layers that we've created specific to site remediation, and that is our Chromate waste site boundaries layer. And I think most of you may at least be somewhat familiar with the Chrome waste sites up in North Jersey and mainly in Hudson County and a small portion of Essex County. So I'm going to zoom to that area. We've broken those out, and we either provide the site boundary, or if we know what the extent of the contamination, chromium contamination at that site is, then we've provided that more specific boundary for that particular site. So here's the symbology for the site. Now I'm going to go back to another search tool, and we do have one set up for this layer. And you can either search by pref ID, what the site name starts with, or the Chrome site number, because each of them has been given a number. There's about 212 or so sites. This one happens to be site number 154. I hit apply. It comes up. It's called College Tower Apartments. It's in Jersey City. And I'm going to close out of that. So one of our requirements through site remediation is to do public notification, where you can either post a sign that identifies the site as a contaminated site, or you can go out with a letter to all the property owners. I think it's within 400 feet of the property boundary. So this public notification tool is set up to grab information from the parcel layer, property ownership information, and create a mailing label of that. So I opened up the tool. Now what I want to do is I want to select an area on the map. And once again, you can create a polygon, you can create a line, a point. In this case, I want to look at this College Tower Apartments and I want to do a notification. So before I start to do that, let's turn on the parcel layer and you can see what's going on. So we have a lot of parcels nearby to this building, to these sets of buildings. So let's turn off the labels because it gets a little busy. And then I'm going to select, oops. Okay, let's try this one more time. Zoom back out. So I've selected this particular Chrome site boundary. Then I can apply a search distance. I'm going to use 100 feet just because 400 feet would be a little dense. It's going to, and you can see which parcels have been selected. Everything's highlighted in blue that falls within that 100-foot radius. And so here it tells you what the format is. It's going to be a PDF label. You can also have it print out as a CSV file. And I'm not going to actually run the tool because it will take some time. And I know we're a little behind on time, so I'm going to show you what the output would be. So this is what prints out. Well, this is what comes up when you run that tool, and you have the ability to print this out on a plotter, print out labels, put it on envelopes, and you could easily get information out to the property owners within this specified area. The one thing to keep in mind is this parcel layer is not always up to date with the information that's contained within it. It is updated on a yearly basis at the state level, but all the information that goes into this layer bubbles up from the municipality level to the county level, and they're all on their own schedules. And, things are happening all the time in regards to property ownership. And the other thing to keep in mind is this is the property owner. If the property owner is living somewhere outside of this area, that label would be to that property owner, not to the property itself. So you may need to do some further investigation before you're able to use the output from this tool. And the other format that it provides is the CSV file. And I know we've talked about a CSV file the entire training. Well, here's actually what one looks like. Open it up in Excel. Some properties do not have an address associated with them. But here is, a typical property label. You'd have to clean this up because the zip code was truncated as a number, not as a text field. But you can go in here and look through these and then do any updates and add to this and then create labels from the Excel file. So that is what I wanted to show you as far as the public notification tool is concerned. So I'm going to go back in, reset. And the last part of my demonstration is going to focus on adding different data sets to get the most out of this tool. So one of the projects that I had been Oh, before we get there, um, we were looking, and when I initially started my demonstration, we were looking at a site boundary for an MPL site. Well, if I go back into this Add Data button, I happen to know that there is an, hold on, there's an MPL layer that's available to the public, and I have the URL right here, so I can copy that URL, paste it, hit add, and it's going to take a few minutes, but you'll see all the MPL site boundaries throughout, it's actually throughout the entire country. And just to show you real quickly, and I can view it in the attribute table. And I'm going to just set a quick filter so we're just looking at those that fall within New Jersey. So state string, and in this case, I happen to know it's NJ, so I don't have to look for the unique values. So that's a quick filter, and like I said, that filter will be on just during the time that we're working in this. And if I reload or if I get out of the application, come back in, that filter would go away. But for the entire time we're working within the application, unless I say otherwise, it will be there. So now I'm going to sort them ascending, and we're going to go back to AO Polymer, select it, zoom to. Let's see how good we did with our initial site boundary. So you can see the site boundary was pretty much what I had created initially. And then this other portion is their groundwater plume. This happens to actually have a CEA associated with it already in our system. So you can see, you know, we're a little more conservative with the CEA, but it captures the groundwater part of what they've identified. So that's just an additional way you can add data. I could have also, I could have also done a search of ArcGIS online and typed in, you know, MPL site boundary, and I could have, you know, found that eventually. A lot of information would come up, but I could sort through it and find what I'm looking for and add it in that way. So next, I want to talk about an interesting project where someone approached me from one of our site remediation bureaus, and they were dealing with a military base, and they had a report of a fire at a Nike missile site back in the, I want to say, late 50s, I believe. And they wanted to know what was going on there as far as current, like where it was located and what the current situation was with that portion of the site, because it was no longer part of the military base. So I did some searching, and for those of you who aren't aware, Nike missiles were deployed by the United States back in the 1950s or mid 1950s to protect all the major American cities and military bases from Russia or Soviet bombers during the Cold War. And so anyway, I did a search and I found a KML, once again, a KML file. If I click on it, of all the US Nike missile sites online, and I was able to download that. And when I click on it, it opens up in Google Earth. And if you give it a minute, you can see, and it's distributed not only, you know, it's throughout the United States and our allies' locations, but you can see how it's centered around a lot of our major cities, especially along the East Coast. So I'm going to go back into here. So if I go to my add data and I go to file, drop and drag that. Let's turn these off. Okay, so, oops, I think I grabbed the wrong thing. Let's do this again. I grabbed the wrong KML. Okay, there we go. That's what I was looking for. So as I zoom out, you can see how all the major cities, Philadelphia, New York City, and DC, Baltimore, everything was protected by these Nike missile sites. So I want to look at a specific one that I happen to know was located in Lumberton, New Jersey. So when I click on that, it takes me into a location, and you can kind of see something looks like a pattern here. So I was able to go online and find some pictures of what these Nike missile sites once looked like, and you can kind of see that same pattern even in the 2020 imagery of where this Nike missile site was located. And then if I click on this, it gives me some information. It says it's a double launch area. And so once again, I'm going to go back, go to my imagery. Turn on the 1977 imagery, use the swipe tool, and you can see a much clearer picture of where the actual Nike missile site was located. So it's just another way of incorporating data you were able to find in various formats and be able to make use of it within this application. So finally, from my final portion of my presentation, let me reset this. So your client, as an LSRP, your client approaches you, sends you an email and says, hey, I'm interested in purchasing this particular property and I'd like to expand what is currently there. Can you tell me, what potential issues I might run into with DEP? All they gave you was a set of coordinates in New Jersey State Plane. So you can use this add coordinate or locate using XY coordinate function, copy these, paste them in. Oops. And then when I run that, it takes a little while. I'll just demonstrate. I'm using the shift and the left mouse button to zoom in, and it's putting me up into one of the more pristine areas of the state. So if I turn on some of our layers, I'm not really finding anything in terms of contamination. There's no known contaminated sites nearby. If I turn on NGEM sites, there is a PSE&G transmission tower. So I'm kind of at a loss. Okay, so what's going on here? So first thing I would do is maybe turn on my Parcel layer, zoom in a little closer. I click on that and I find, okay, this is the owner is the North New Jersey Council, BSA, Boy Scouts of America. Okay, so it's a Boy Scout owned property. What else can I find out? Let's go to receptors. Turn on this surface water quality classification layer. So sometimes if there's more than one layer on, and you click on your pop-up, it'll display one of two. This is the parcel information. I click on it again. It's telling me the surface water quality classification. So this is an FW2 trout maintenance C1 water. So right away I know C1, okay, I'm going to be restricted in what I can and can't do in this area most likely. Then I want to get an idea, well, are there wetlands? Yes, there's plenty of wetlands, and click on it and it tells you what they are: deciduous wooded, deciduous shrub, herbaceous wetlands. Now I start to think about, well, how are they receiving their water? Are they in a purveyor area, which means they're getting their water from a municipal water company? I turn that on. Nope, they are not in a purveyor area. So let's see if there's any community supply well protection areas. Nope. So they're most likely getting their water from a well. Then when I turn on the non-community wellhead protection area, lo and behold, there's 2 wells located within the property. So that answers that question. Then there's a lot of different data layers you can look at. So we go into what bedrock aquifer are they located within. Let me just turn this parcel layer off because it's interfering. So it's the Martinsburg Formation and Jutland sequence. Then if I go to the actual bedrock geology, it's the Ramseyburg member, which the lithology is the Grey-Wacky sandstone and siltstone, shale and slate. So already I'm starting to get a pretty good picture of this area. And one of the things that we really don't go into, but we have this landscape, and this provides information about endangered and threatened species and habitats. So I know this is located within the Skyland, so it has a 5-level ranking, 5 being the highest priority at the federal level. So unfortunately, when I look at this, it's coming up a lot of green, this dark green around the site. And there's a lot of information here. So what you can do is with the pop-up, you can expand it for the entire screen. These are all the threatened and endangered species. One of the things that's kind of neat is you can see all this information about bobcats being in the area. It's not something that's too common within New Jersey. And a bunch of other plants and rare plants and animals. So you can also go in and go into planning areas, and one of the layers that we have in here is open space. So it's basically telling me the owners, the Boy Scouts of America. It's open space within Hardwick Township. This is, different pieces of information. This is all part of the landscape project. So I'm going to go back to landscape and turn all these layers off. So then I'm almost finished now. I'm thinking, well, are there any other potential locations I may have missed or facilities that are nearby? So when I click on this Egyptes regulated facility, comes up here. Let me turn this NGem sites off. And it says Camp No BO SCO. That's definitely Boy Scouts. So they are associated with an Egyptes permit. And you can get information about that permit because we do have the Egyptes number, and you can run a data miner report for that. And I went ahead and did that. So it's telling me even more information about this particular site, contact information and type of permit and things like that. So then finally, I've gotten all of this, I've been able to pull all this information together about this particular property. And then I went in and did an internet search, and it turns out that it was previously used as the set location for the original Friday the 13th, and it was called Camp Crystal Lake, or Camp Blood, if you remember that, if you go back that far back and remember that particular movie. So I went back and I contacted the client and told him that, and he said, "Oh, I knew that all along. I'm looking to make this one of the premier attractions during Halloween by playing up the fact that it was the location for the original Friday the 13th. So then I would tell him, well, you can use what's there, but you're going to have a hard time expanding this particular facility given its location. And on that note, I will pass it over to the poll question, and I just want to thank everyone for attending today, and I hope you're going to get a lot out of this. And we'll be on after the poll question. We'll be here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you so much, Joe. We are going to put up the fourth and final poll question right now. It is the public notification tool allows you to create mail labels for properties within a specified distance of a point or polygon. True or false? So you all have a minute to answer that. And just remember that you need to answer 3 out of 4 poll questions and be logged in for the whole training today to be eligible for your CECs. And once we finish up with this poll question, we are going to move on to taking some more questions from the audience. Okay, this is finishing up in a few seconds. The answer to that question is true, which is pretty convenient. So in case you didn't know that, now you do. All right, and I'm looking at the question box. Let's see. It doesn't look like there are any specific questions from this portion of the training.
So Alyssa, I just want to make a comment about, there have been several questions about web availability of layers and such. And I put in the response several links to NJ-GeoWeb, the state's webpage, and there is a DEP webpage that has all these layers available. So that you just Google the locations and what you're looking for, and you can find the download locations fairly easily.
Okay, great. I don't see any questions that are specifically, oh, here we go. I don't know if any of these are specifically relevant to the training, so some of these we'll have to follow up with via email because I don't think that this is the venue for some of these questions. So I think we can just move on to closing out this training. Christina?
Thank you. I was asking Joe if he wanted to put that last slide up with the blood face all over it. So with that, like Alyssa said, we are finished for today. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks to Don and there it is, Joe for their efforts. This was a lot to pull off, especially to do live. So a big thank you to them. Our course evaluation is in the chat. And I just want to reiterate any questions that weren't answered or comments that you're looking for some feedback from the department on, anything that was not responded to during this presentation. You'll get an email back either from Joe or Don in the near future covering those topics. So I think we can end this webinar for today. Everyone have a great day and thank you.